Even though this tutorial is all about the Squarespace Map Plugin, which gives us advanced map designs and styles that we can apply to the beautiful but pretty basic Squarespace Map tools. The beauty of this is we still use the base Squarespace maps, but this plugin gives us extra tabs that we can work with. But in this tutorial, interestingly, we're not going to be working with the plugin at all. Instead, we're going to be creating custom pointers. So if you've been through this playlist or you saw the video when it came out, I did hint in that tutorial that I wanted to create a dedicated guide to creating custom map pins using Canva for the Squarespace Advanced Map Plugin. That's what this tutorial is. So let's jump in. First of all, I'm just going to hop over to the Squarespace website. And we can see here, we've got the plugins available via this menu option here. If we scroll down, we should be able to find the Advanced Map Plugin. There we go. So Interactive Advanced Map Block. We've got this one at $40. That's the single license. And sometimes the easiest way to find that is click on it once and then hop down. If you want the commercial license or the multiple sites license, click on purchase here and it will take you over to the correct version. This one's $70, so the moment you've got 2 sites, it will start saving you money. And then, of course, it allows unlimited websites, which is well worth it. So any professional designers out there, this is a plugin that's well worth the money. And you could even wrap it up into your first project build so you don't take the hit directly. So let's have a look at this map tool. We can see we've got advanced options here. We can even have pinpointers for placements. And I've been through all of this, how to set it up and install it. I've got a few more, slightly more advanced versions for this advanced map plugin coming down the line, and I'll keep you in the loop on them. But we can see that these pop-ups here can happen. I think this image has just been distorted a little bit, so that's why the pins aren't quite as perfect as they could be. But fear not, that's easy to remedy. Say, for example, these pointers, we wanted to do something unique for each of them. In the past, I created this really quickly. The only downside to this is when we tried it out during that tutorial, it was roughly this size, which is just too small for the map pin and the detail of actually having a photo in that to appear. So I thought I'd just take it back a step. We'll use icons in this case to show how we can design custom map pins that could have your logo or shorthand icon from your logo placed within it, or even an icon if we look at something like fuel stations. And then we wanted all of the service stations to be pointers on the map. But instead of working on this one directly, I'm going to jump to the Canva homepage and we're going to create a custom size. For you to use the asset library in Canva and be able to download the pointers as transparent PNGs with transparent backgrounds, then I'd strongly recommend going for Canva Pro. Not only for that, but Canva Pro is my go-to design tool these days, more so than Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. Even though I've been using those since the 90s, I just find Canva having everything in one place is so much quicker, unless I need to create something bespoke from the ground up, which is becoming less and less. Because we've created our brand that sits around use of iconography, we can usually find icon sets that we can reuse from Canva instead of asking Ken, our lead creative, to design custom icons every single time. We mix and match between the two because we have the skill set in-house, but still it's nice to have the flexibility and speed of Canva. I can go for custom size here, and what I want to do is go for 64 by 64. So we can see in the recent one here, and that's 64 pixels. That will create a square image, the same size as the other example. From here, we can now start adding our elements. I'm going to go to elements. This is a really quick tutorial and it's a great introduction into something like Canva. We could go for standard shapes. Say you just wanted something really simple like a triangle that's color coded in your brand. You could do something as simple as this. You could have it sitting from the top. We can stretch it so it fits the frame. And that's probably the simplest, most straightforward shape pointer that you could add in. We can change the color via this color swatch here because most of the shapes, not all, but most are fully editable within Canva. And let's say we wanted a icon within this. So I'm going to use the fuel station as an example. So fuel station icon, and we'll have the fuel pump. Now I can just position that, change the color, and now we've got a unique map pointer. This is actually perfectly centered. We've got guides in Canva that show us how to do that. It's really intuitive. However, because this icon is offset, as in most of the heavy weighting in the icon is to the left, sometimes I just like to shift it over slightly to the right. Even though that's not perfectly central, we want the main part of the icon to be more towards the center. It just looks more balanced when we zoom out. But if we go to that size now of 50%, we can still see just about that fuel pump icon, and 75%, that's more the case. The reason I can't give you an exact size in terms of how it's going to appear, because it will depend on the resolution of the screen that you use. And the one thing I haven't checked yet is, can we change the icon size within the plugin directly, which is something I want to do in a future tutorial. I'm guessing we can, but then that could cause knock-on complications in terms of zoom levels and the icons sitting on top of each other too much. So that's something we've got to keep in mind, is that we want to make sure that we are not making them too chunky, and we stick to the basic rules to start with and see how that looks. What I'm going to do now is add a page, and let's try a different type of pointer. So we could put Map Pin as a search and just see what it comes up with. But if we wanted the very, very simple map pin like this, we can create that. I would assume that the bottom of the pin is where the location is going to be, so I would probably just take that as close to the bottom as we can, although it's not going to be an exact science. Now we can even change the colors. I would make them the same to start with, all three colors, and then select the highlight, for example. I just go to this plus icon here and just bring it up manually. So it stays in the same tone, the same hue, but we're bringing the lightness up. We want to keep it as close to the top as possible to keep that saturation up so it doesn't become too faded. And then the same for this option here, I think, which is, I think, the middle ring here. So we keep this roughly the same. Or, alternatively, we can press Command Z to undo and actually select the first one of the three. And instead of doing anything with the middle one, we make this one darker. We've created that 3D effect on a 2D illustration from Map Pin. That's another simple option. And then when we zoom right out, we've just got a very simple map pin that could then match your brand colors. So let's have a look at some other map pin options. We've got the default one here. And let's say we wanted to get this as big as we can within the frame. So I'm going to bring it right up to the top, scaling proportionately. And then we're going to have that aligned. Aha. So we can see there's an illustration here. We can see that there's more space to the right of this icon than to the left. That's why it looks a little bit off center. But even though when we use the guide, it's not quite right. So I'm going to use the right arrow cursor just to shift it over one. And now that looks centered. And it's not going to be essential because the size of them is going to be so small. So that's going to be the size of the pointer. But I like to get things right. It's the designer in me. Okay, let's go for a different color on this one. Let's go for this slightly burnt red color here. And now let's go for a circle shape. Click on it. And I'm going to just do something really simple here. I'm going to take this circle over it. So I've got two options. I can either leave it as a different circular tone in there, or what I could do instead, and this is what I would normally do, is I'd duplicate it. So I've got both options. Just make sure that's central within that pin. And I've got two options here. I can either keep that, or I can instead have it as one solid, almost like a guitar pick. Now I can go in and put our fuel pump icon in this one, and potentially I could go much bigger to get that to really stand out. However, trying to get the balance so we've got good white space, the space in between the elements. That white space is important because I'll show you another example whilst we're at it, where someone would be tempted to make it too big within the pointer. Let's go for a darker color on the same tone. Always seems to work better than going with, say, for example, in most cases, not always, but say going for black there. So I'm going to use the color pointer here, and we're going to match it up with that. So we've got two map pointers now. Let's have a look at them together. This one here, we can see almost like the lines are touching now, whilst this one's got more breathing space around it. I think this one's much better. It looks more professional at design. Especially when we look at here, we can still see the detail in the fuel pump. This one is going too close to the edges. And this is a rookie mistake that many non-designers will take, is they don't get their spacing right between the icon and the map pin or the outlining shape. I think it's missing one more thing. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this option here. I'm going to press Command and the left bracket just to move it back behind the icon. And I'm just going to make that a bit smaller. And I'm going to select the background now. And with the background selected, I'm just going to do a really easy drop shadow effect. Now I can take this top one and just move it with using the arrow cursors. So it's got a slight halo around it, which is heavier weighted towards the bottom and right. That will just make the map pin seem more three-dimensional and jump on the page. It's actually using what we call flat design. We're using solid colors to create 3D effects. And then you can just play around with it until you get to a point where something that you like. So that one looks better. There's more of an obvious drop shadow effect on it. So that's one way of doing it. Alternatively, to wrap up, we could go into Canva and add some effects. So if you go to edit image, if it's a vector and you can change the colors, you have fewer options to work with. But if we go to drop shadows or shadows and then go to drop, that will create a 3D shadow effect. So you may prefer that option, and we can still change the colors to better suit the design. And then we can remove the blur option, so that's solid. Color intensity, we can take that right the way up to 100%. Essentially, we're creating the same effect, but we're using the drop shadows and distances instead of just duplicating the shape. The reason we can see this behind here is we need to just move that backwards and now make sure that we've got that shape repositioned. And there we go. What we can also do is the same effect with this icon here, if it will allow us. Shadow, drop shadow, I'm not changing the distance, but I'm again getting rid of the blur, increasing the shadow intensity, making it similar to the map, but just slightly darker again. And in this case, just reducing the distance. So we've got that effect on pump. Although that's so subtle, we probably won't be able to see it at that depth. Several different map pin designs, starting from the very simple through to the classic map pin or tack pin. We've got a simple map pin effect here. We could add a logo or we can add icons depending on what we want to do. There's one more thing I want to show you before we wrap up. We go to share here. We need to select PNG. And also, in almost all cases, we're going to want to select transparent background. That means that the white block behind will not appear, and that will then sit on top of the Squarespace map views. And therefore, using the Advanced Map plugin, because this is the only way we can add custom pointers to the Squarespace map, it will then appear on the Squarespace map without any white block around it. We can also choose to download all pages together. It'll compress them into a zip folder, or we can choose a page individually to download it as just a standalone PNG file. If we want to save those settings in future, we just tick that box. The transparent background, we can see the little crown here. That's Canva Pro only. We will not be able to download this with a transparent background on the free version. However, you probably will find websites that will remove the background of icons. So if you really want to skirt around having to pay your hard-earned money on these, you could probably find the icons from somewhere else. You could probably find the third-party background remover tool and use Canva only as a way of assembling all of these items together. Some shapes are completely free to use in Canva. We can see all of the standard ones. Of the three that we've chosen, the circle and the fuel pump and the map pin, two of them have got the little crown icon next to them, meaning that they are Canva Pro. This option here, and then if we just tick free, and you want to stick to only the free versions here, we can see we've got this map pin option here, which still allows you to change. You should be able to do most of this for free. The sticking point will be getting rid of that white background block behind it, because it will look really unsightly if you don't use that. But it's just a case of doing a quick Google search, free online background remover. This is the first one. I haven't tested it. I'm not affiliated with them. I've not seen this before, but we should be able to upload an image from our computer and see if that works. Do it at your own risk. Do some background research and see if there are any good, safe websites that you can use. If you want to get hold of the Advanced Map plugin, either for commercial use or the single use, which is $40, I believe, if you use my link in the description, that will get me some hard-earned affiliate income and it helped me create more tutorials like this. Enjoy, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.